Starting now?
Alright, go.
Okay. Welcome to the second ever edition of the Fifth Down Podcast. I'm Jeremy, and we're here talking the NFL. We're a little bit later today than usual. We had some breaking news come down the pipeline a little bit before this podcast was set to go, so I wanted to get some information on that and cover that. And we're going to jump right into it. Russell Wilson, starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos, they traded a king's ransom for, paid out the wazoo, hired Sean Payton to fix, has been benched. For the last 2 games of the season, they will be starting Jared Stidham at quarterback. Now, the reason for this, maybe a little bit of his play, maybe some other things, but another reason, one of the reasons I had to look up some numbers. Russell Wilson, for next year, has already been guaranteed $39 million. In his contract, if he cannot pass a physical in March for whatever reason, hurt, or if he cannot pass a physical in early March, he is going to be given an additional $37 guaranteed million next year. So that $39 million becomes a staggering $76 million next year if he cannot pass that physical. Now, whether they're going to try and keep him for next year or trade him, I'm wagering they are going to trade him. We're going to talk about the trade partnership in a little bit. We're just going to get kind of an encompassing opinion on this situation real quick. So they benched him for Stidham. They want to see what they got in Stidham. Obviously, the Broncos coming off of a loss, not really in playoff contention anymore. They're in the very bottom of that in the hunt. But it's like a 2% chance. They'd have to win out and probably get a lot of help. But yeah, so looking like the Russell Wilson experiment coming to an end. Sean Payton, obviously this is his first year. They've just paid him. They were playing meaningful football, so that is better than what they were doing last year by a far margin. But now you got to look at the Denver Broncos moving forward in next season. Obviously they shut him down, so he's not hurt. It's been a very quarterback injury kind of a year. There's been 54, 55 different starting quarterbacks this year alone. And we think about the quarterbacks that have gone down, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers. A lot of other quarterbacks have been hurt. Trevor Lawrence is probably going to start missing a few games now too. It makes a lot more sense why to just shut him down right now, out of it, just finishing it up. So, if I was to rank what's more than likely going to happen, is I think the most likely is they're going to try to trade him. I don't know if they'll be able to trade him contract-wise. They're probably going to have to eat a lot of his money because he's kind of proven, even with Sean Payton, who, if they do well with Jared Stidham in the next 2 games, is really going to show how far Russell has fallen, how quick he has fallen out of fashion. I've got four trade partners that are the most likely, and this is not in the particular order, but it is the Atlanta Falcons, the Chicago Bears, the New England Patriots, and the Washington Commanders. The Falcons, I could see making a splash trade for them. Maybe try to just get something in that division. The Panthers are a mess. The Saints are running their team, like I've said, like there's a Ponzi scheme and the league's going to fold by next Christmas. So their cap is eventually going to come due and wreck the Saints. The Bucks are the best team in that division. They are 8-7. That's how bad that division is. So maybe they think they can go trade some picks, maybe help take a little bit of that money off the Broncos. Maybe they can get Wilson for cheap, try it for a year or two, see if they can kind of soft reboot the franchise with Arthur Smith, an offensive head coach. But I don't know if they would be willing to do that, or if they would much rather go in the draft and find somebody else again, or maybe roll with a different veteran quarterback. Up next on the likely, they have the capital maybe to do it and not take almost maybe any of the contract, the Chicago Bears. They're more than likely going to move off of Justin Fields, not going to pick up, I believe he's going to be up for his 5th year option, or close to it. I don't think they are likely to keep Fields this year. They're going to have the number 1 or the number 2 draft pick, thanks to the Carolina Panthers. Do they want Caleb Williams and roll the dice on another rookie quarterback who, yes, he's very highly touted, or they may go with Drake May? They've been down this road two times already with going from Mitchell Trubisky to Justin Fields. Maybe they look at Russell Wilson. Green Bay, the NFC North is a much harder division. The Vikings have a lot of firepower with Jefferson, Addison. Kevin O'Connell's a decent offensive coach. The Lions, who just won the division for the first time in 30 years, first time they've technically ever won the North. Last time they won it, it was still the Central. There's a lot of moving parts in Chicago. Is Eberflus going to be gone? We'll talk about a lot of the coaching situations as they unfold. Once we get playoffs, and then after the Super Bowl, when we hit that lull, we'll discuss more about coaching situations and who is probably going to be gone and not. Eberflus may be on the hot seat, so if you trade for Wilson, you may be able to get him an offensive coordinator as a head coach, or get an offensive coordinator as an offensive head coach that might be able to tailor it to him. You might be able to remain competitive. The defense has been cleaned up a little bit there in Chicago, and there are some nice pieces with DJ Moore as a wide receiver. So Chicago might be an option. They may be able to try to send Justin Fields to Denver too, in a quarterback trade. So that's another one. Another option, the New England Patriots. If they keep Belichick, I don't think he's going to want to try and run it back with another rookie quarterback, a high pick. If they win more games and they kind of get out of that Caleb Williams, Drake May sweepstakes, they may try to look for kind of what they did with Cam Newton. Get a veteran in there who might be able to run a decent offense, something along those lines. So they may attempt to trade for him, and I see the Broncos be more than willing to trade within the AFC. Nobody in the division really needs a quarterback. The Chiefs are obviously fine. The Raiders, they may stick with their quarterback right now. They may go get somebody else. Obviously, Garoppolo didn't work out. But I don't think they would trade Wilson to Denver, and I don't think the Raiders would have much, if any, interest in him. But I do see the Patriots with a good defense. Maybe ask Wilson to just tone it back, don't turn the ball over. They've got Douglas is a nice piece as a wide receiver. Maybe they can go big game hunting if they can kind of pick up Wilson on maybe a half and half deal with the Broncos for the money. They may be able to pick him up, maybe still keep a high draft pick, and go and get a wide receiver depending on where they draft. Get some skilled players to put around him, and maybe do a little bit of free agency also to maybe bolster a little bit to try to give Bill that one last run. And the last on my list of the likely ones, the Washington Commanders. They're in prime blow-it-up territory, but with the new owners, maybe they give Bieniemy a shot, promote him to head coach, bring in Wilson. Maybe they think, well, Sean got 7-8 games. Maybe in the weaker NFC. Yes, the NFC East is not weak with the Cowboys, even though they do cowboy things. And the Eagles being very good. Maybe Wilson can help them steal one out of those 4 games or 2. And then you beat up the Giants twice. And then you try to take stock of wherever else in the NFC you got. Commanders may also be another fit. I believe they have more than enough in cap space next year. I'd have to look more into their cap situation, but I do know they would have enough to take maybe more burdensome part of the Wilson contract off Denver's hands in exchange for maybe not giving up as much in draft capital or something of that nature. But that's the lead. That was the lead up. That was the breaking news. Is Wilson benched Jarrett Stidham in? So we're gonna have to monitor that going forward, see how Stidham does. If the offense doesn't look any different, maybe it is something with Sean Payton, or maybe he really just needs a better quarterback in that room. But if Stidham comes in and lights it up, it's going to be an indictment on Russell Wilson on what he can and can't do anymore, and that may affect where he can and can't go. He's, in my opinion, he's starting to become a very low-end starting quarterback when you look at who may or may not be available on teams that may or may not need people. I know some people would say maybe the Panthers should trade. I think they need to give Bryce Young a year. I don't think you can just back up and punt on him. He's had 2 good weeks back-to-back, even though they've gone 1-1. He did look good against Green Bay. So I think you just got to Panthers are just going to roll. They're not going to try to get another big splash acquisition. I think they need to calm down and work on a soft reboot. But that is, like I said, the breaking news. Last two games of the season for the Broncos. Even though, yes, they're technically in the hunt, they're not really in the hunt. They're just there because the math says they are. So, switching gears now. I'm going to start off in the AFC and kind of recap some of the stuff that's happened and where things have fallen. We're going to start off with that Monday night game. San Francisco, Baltimore. Baltimore cruises to a win. Kind of a weird game. Referee Lamar trips over the ref, gets a safety, kind of weird. But Ravens dominate for the most part. Purdy throws 4 picks. They throw Darnold in there. He throws a pick. That defense is humming. The offense is looking good enough right now. They just shell-shocked another NFC team, which, for trivia night, if anyone would like to know, Lamar has only lost one time to an NFC team. And the quarterback of that team, Daniel Jones. Lamar's one loss to an NFC team. It's not Aaron Rodgers. It's not Matthew Stafford and all of them. It's Daniel Jones and the Giants. That's weird. But, like I said, the Ravens now, if they be going to go into, I don't recall if it's a home or away game, and I don't have that note with me. My apologies, but they play Miami this week, beat Miami, secure the number 1 seed. Should be able to rest players in the last week of the season against the Steelers, unless they just want to try and knock the Steelers out of the playoffs if they're still in that contention spot. But yes, the Ravens, 1 seed, they look to be cruising at the right time. They just keep losing people, but they don't lose a step. And I think that's very important. They've been able to maintain and monitor what they've been able to do, which is be a physical football team, still be able to throw the ball like they need, put up a bunch of points. Their defense is just smothering people. So this will be another good test of that defense. I think the Dolphins show a different kind of an offensive threat, obviously, than what maybe the Niners do. I know it's the same Shanahan system, but I believe the skill players of Devon Achane, Waddle, if he plays, I know he's dealing with an ankle issue. I'm not for sure on that right now. I don't know if it's been determined whether he'll play or not. And also Tyreek Hill, which that may bode well still for the Ravens, as they've played against Tyreek Hill quite a bit. Obviously, when he was with Mahomes, it's a different maybe style for Hill, and how McDaniel uses him than how Reed and Mahomes used him. But I do believe this will be a good litmus test for the Ravens defense to go back-to-back weeks against very good offenses and see how they stack up, see if they can turn the ball over like they did with Purdy and Sam Darnold collectively. 5 interception performance on Christmas Day. Going to the other Christmas Day game on another division leader, the Kansas City Chiefs. They lay an absolute egg. Defense outstanding. The defense gives up 6 points. But the Chiefs' offense gift wraps two defensive touchdowns to the Raiders. They wind up losing 20-14 on Christmas. The offense is just all sorts of out of whack right now. Granted, there was no Kadarius Toney. Jerick McKinnon's gone to IR. Pacheco missed a game with a concussion, so they're down to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, their bust running back, kind of trying to maintain the workload. And they never got really anything going on offense. It just, something is broken, something is just not clicking, and it may just be another bad night. Obviously, the offensive line could not hold up at all. I believe they have drastically overpaid for Jawan Taylor at this point. Once they took away his ability to false start on almost every play, he has not been holding up on the edge as well. I think Mahomes knows it. He's speeding himself up in the pocket because he knows his tackles they can't hold up right now. Max Crosby and some of the other defensive linemen, they were almost back there quicker than he could hand the ball off, it felt like, or even try a run-pass option. You thought for a minute there in the first quarter they might have been able to do something. They got that trick play touchdown. They get the ball at their own 6-7 yard line. Immediately try almost another trick play with the direct snap handoff. It goes completely belly up, and it goes back the other way for a touchdown. That's another problem, in my opinion, with the Kansas City Chiefs. You don't need a trick play right there. I think they're trying really, really hard to scheme, get guys open, and a lot of other stuff. In a sense, they're pressing. They're pressing really hard to try and fix the wide receivers that I don't think there's much fixing to do. I think you just got what you got. Um, Even when Tony comes back, I believe he missed this game with an injury. I don't think he'll go to IR, and who knows, maybe missing a game with an injury, maybe he'll come back and do a little bit better. But really, right now, it's just the Travis Kelce show, and right now he gets the ball. There's three people around him. There's three, four people. They're gonna say you're gonna be for somebody else, and right now the Chiefs cannot. The Raiders' defense did do a very good job. I will give them that. The defense deserve their flowers. Uh, Pierce, their interim head coach, people arguing he needs to get the head coaching job. I don't know if he will or if he won't. I don't know. The players obviously would want him to. It was kind of a repeat of a few years ago with Rich Bisaccia when he got them to the playoffs, and he was able. They didn't win that playoff game, but they were very competitive with the Bengals. Um, and now here we go again. They in theory have a chance to win the division still. I don't think they will. I think the Chiefs will bounce back, take care of business against Jake Browning and the Bengals this week. And if not, they'll beat the floundering Chargers and whatever they have at quarterback in the very last week. But the Raiders have the Colts upcoming. I want to see how this team responds to basically a huge win. This is one of the bigger wins for the Raiders in a long time. Obviously they're playing for their coach Pierce, hoping he gets the job. Mark Davis is keeping an eye on all this, and they're playing the Colts, who's coming off of a pretty bad loss to the Falcons. They're trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. They're currently the 7th seed, so I want to see how this Raiders team comes back this week. Does that defense still play outstanding? The offense would have to pick it up though. A lot of people have heard the quarterback Aiden O'Connell, he did not complete a pass after the first quarter. But who knows? That game kind of went so weird. They were just trying to kind of stave off the Chiefs. They weren't trying to just blow them out. I feel they got up and they just handed the ball off, kind of trying to bleed clock there for a long time. So going forward, I still have full confidence in the Chiefs to make the Super Bowl, mainly because of who else is there and kind of everything else. It's not just me being a homer. When you look at the rest of them, we'll talk about the Dolphins and what they were able to do here in a few minutes. What will they have to get through? Well, the way that everything is shaking out right now is the Browns are going to go to Miami unless Miami beats Baltimore. If everything holds in the playoff picture. My apologies. I apologize for that. Browns would actually be going to the winner of the South because the Browns are obviously the 5 seed. My apologies for that. The Browns would have to go to the winner of the South, which would either be the Jaguars, and they're limping into the postseason, or the Colts, who are also kind of limping into the postseason. They fell flat on their face against the Falcons. And then the 6th seed, which would be the Buffalo Bills right now, and if they can continue to hold on and they don't somehow track down Miami for the division, they would have to go to Kansas City. Kansas City has beaten Buffalo. They can't beat them in the regular season, but they can beat them in the playoffs. And that so far has held true this year. Play them in the regular season, lose, and if it holds true again, they may beat them again. Allen, the past 2 times in the playoffs, I don't think they've been that good. They skirt past a Dolphins team last year, obviously, that was playing a guy called Skylar Thompson, a quarterback. And then, obviously, they just get shellacked by the Bengals. So, when we're looking at the playoffs and the Chiefs' path to a Super Bowl, beat the Bills, and then, obviously, the way I think things will work out, they would have to then probably play the Browns next with Joe Flacco because, just kind of extrapolating this out, it would be the Dolphins playing the Colts or whoever slips into that 7 seed. and I think Miami would finally be able to get over their 23-year drought, beat them, and then move into the next round, which would be the Browns at the Chiefs, and then the Dolphins potentially at the Ravens. Um, and like I said, I think once the playoffs start, the the Chiefs, I'm not gonna bet against them. They've been there before, and Tua's never been to the playoffs, so who knows how he might handle that kind of pressure. But speaking of Dolphins, talking about them, we're gonna run down now that matchup between the Dolphins and the Cowboys. It was somebody won that game, but it really felt like both of them lost. I don't think both of them played particularly well. Obviously, the Cowboys feel like they should have won going away with it. They have a weird fumble at the 1 yard line, almost an unforced error. And then they wind up coming back on Miami, taking the lead on them. Miami's able to go down and get a last second field goal to win the game. I watched a lot of that game. I was not really terribly impressed by either team. Dallas couldn't get pressure, but Miami couldn't really ever pull away from that game. Like I felt like with Dallas's miscues, they should have been able to. Um, and I think it just instilled my belief in both teams that neither of them are really Super Bowl contenders. They can probably win. Dallas probably at this point will not win their division with the Giants not beating the Eagles last week in that upset that was potentially there. I believe Philly will win out. Dallas is going to be on the road. And right now, Dallas on the road, not good. It's some voodoo thing with them right now. They cannot, for whatever reason, play well on the road. Um, when you two out of their 3 wins on the road have been against the Panthers and the Giants, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL right now. So, Eagles only have to play Arizona and the Giants again, and I don't see the Giants getting what they got in that Sunday game against them. Or I think it was Monday. My apologies. The Christmas games going from Saturday, triple header on Monday. That got me a little confused. My apologies. I just don't see the Philadelphia Eagles losing another game, meaning Dallas is going to have to go on the road. And right now, I think they proved it against a team that can take a punch. They can't beat them on the road. They might be able to beat them at home, not on the road. So somehow, Miami won the game. I felt less confident in them. Dallas obviously loses that game, and I'm less confident in them. The Browns also kept their winning ways. The Browns are actually still alive for their division, which is interesting. Joe Flacco's come to that offense almost and set a record with Amari Cooper. I know it's a Browns franchise record. And if there was maybe another half of a quarter, they might have set the NFL record in receiving yards. Apparently, whatever quarterback you plug into the Browns, it just works right now. That offense is doing great. That defense is playing like their lives are on the line every week, and it shows. If I had to give you a team that you just wouldn't think about, the Cleveland Browns to make the Super Bowl, I think, is the 3rd most likely team in the AFC to make the Super Bowl. If I had to rank them, I would still have the Chiefs as number 1 to make the Super Bowl just because of the legacy, how they've been the past couple years. I'd go Chiefs, Ravens, and then Browns. Not the Dolphins, not the Bills. I'd choose the Browns. Flacco's been to a Super Bowl. Flacco's won a Super Bowl. For whatever reason, if Flacco gets to the playoffs, it's like he puts on his Superman cape and Clark Kent becomes Superman. Even though he is an older quarterback and slightly more immobile than what he was, and he wasn't very mobile to begin with, and he's, throwing it to the other team, feels like once a half. That defense is too good. That offense is too good. And Njoku is playing out of his mind. It's a great story, him coming back after the accident with the fire. Cooper is really coming in stride. He's a great route runner. And when you look at who they'd have to beat in the AFC, that defense can obviously shut down the Chiefs. The Cleveland has played the Ravens twice, and that I believe, my apologies, that team playing the Ravens a third time. They're 1-1. Yes, that'd be Lamar's third crack at that defense. But the last time they played, they kind of bullied Lamar a little bit. Watson played great in that second game. That was the only game Watson's really looked good in since coming back. But the Ravens defense would have to plan for another quarterback. It'd be the third different starting quarterback they would have played, and that might honestly be a weird NFL record. I can't think off the top of my head another team who had to do that. But yeah, if you really want to put a long shot bet in, it wouldn't be crazy if we saw the Cleveland Browns in their first ever Super Bowl. At the very least, they should be almost even money to make in my opinion, to make the AFC Championship. What team outside of the Ravens can you definitively say that they cannot beat? And even then, they beat the Ravens. And I think Joe Flacco is playing better than Deshaun Watson is. I think the numbers would even almost prove it. That offense has hit another gear. So, that's kind of where we sit with the AFC right now at the top part. We'll hit a couple other things real quick with the AFC before we take a crack at the NFC. And then we'll kind of talk playoffs maybe a little bit. Colts get beat by the Falcons like I alluded to earlier. Didn't look good. They had a chance to really probably muscle their way into the front of the division and run away with it. They fall flat against Taylor Heineke and the Falcons. You can't have that. I know Minshew's technically a backup, but he's played good this season. You just can't have that. So now they really gotta buckle down, win the next two games, and hope Jacksonville can slip up. Jacksonville, obviously, Lawrence was playing hurt, got hurt, shoulder AC joint sprain, I believe is what they said. There's something with his shoulder, I know for sure. I'm not sure if it was the AC or not. It's looking more and more likely that he will not play this week against the Panthers. I know we said that last week, and then he kind of tried to force his way into playing. But they're playing the Panthers. If you can't beat the Panthers right now with how they are, with your backup quarterback, just don't. They have to start Beathard, let Lawrence try to get healthy, and either hope they clinch. I don't know if they can clinch the division, because I know everything's kind of muddied up, and I believe they're all tied. I did not have a chance to look into that scenario, but I do believe if the Jaguars win, Colts lose this week. Obviously, like I said earlier, they're playing the Raiders. Both have a lot to play for. If the Colts lose, Jags win, with a backup quarterback, they should be a lock for their division, and they might be able to rest Lawrence again in the Titans game, try to get him as healthy as possible for a playoff push. But that was kind of the other big thing is the Jaguars, my apologies, losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, getting boat raced by them. Lawrence doesn't look good. That whole team right now kind of feels like they're in a little bit of a mess. Lawrence may not have it. He just may not. He just may be. He may just be Baker Mayfield for the AFC. Just normal guy. Not nothing special. I know there were concerns out of college about how does he maybe have the highest of motors? No. I don't know. I don't see special for Trevor Lawrence as much as you need to for somebody drafted as he was. They've got a good head coach in Doug Peterson. They've got plenty of weapons, but something just feels off. And maybe there's an injury. If it comes out that he was dealing on and off with an injury maybe, and he just muscled through the year, that might give him a reprieve for next year. But I believe next year is the big make it or break it year. You gotta, in my opinion, with Trevor Lawrence, kind of how the AFC had shaken out, this year would have been a great year to try to make a run at the AFC title game. But obviously Lawrence gets hurt, they're faltering, the defense has regressed. They got to address a lot of that in the offseason. So we're going to go into this week against the Panthers with the Jaguars. if they can win, that'd be the best thing for them. Obviously, winning is the best thing for anybody, unless you're trying to get a higher draft pick. But giving the option to potentially rest Lawrence against the Titans also would be really good, and it'd help them out when it comes to the playoffs. So that is going to wrap up what we're going to talk about with the AFC. Like I said, once the season gets over and we hit the playoffs, maybe hit the later rounds, we'll start discussing draft order, what teams do and don't need, and that's when we'll get to some of the lower teams in the AFC that have already been eliminated, along with the NFC. But speaking of NFC, we're going to shift to the other side of football, and we're going to talk the NFC. We're going to start again like how we started with the AFC. The big match, the 49ers get boat raced and just steamrolled by the Ravens. Maybe it's just the fact that it's Lamar Jackson and NFC teams outside of Daniel Jones, apparently, they don't beat the Ravens. Sorry about that. It's kind of what everybody thought. Purdy turns into the pumpkin. He faced adversity, which who knows? Maybe the Ravens are just one of the only teams that can make him have to maybe kind of play from behind, play rough, play tough. Kind of one of the only teams that maybe can make them do that. Maybe they'll be fine going forward. But it is kind of it's not a 5-alarm fire. I'd say maybe 2. Maybe at least finish your hand in poker before you leave the building kind of a fire, They still may be in the quarterback market next year. Purdy was a good story for the last 2 years. But if he goes into the playoffs, and who knows, they play somebody rough, and Purdy looks like he did, honestly, anytime he's had adversity, anybody can play great when you're throwing to Christian McCaffrey, who's so wide open that he falls down, gets back up, and still gets into the end zone without being touched. Anybody's going to look good when you can do that. The question is, what's he going to be able to do when maybe all his Avengers aren't there, or when things aren't going perfect in the Shanahan system. And right now we've kind of seen that he doesn't handle that well. So, the Niners, with who is in the NFC right now, I think they're still a favorite to make the NFC title game, come out of the NFC as a Super Bowl contender. Just because they've shown they can go and beat up Philadelphia. They went beat up Dallas. I've alluded to it, even though Tampa might give them a little bit of a frisky game. I think they could beat Tampa. Maybe Sean McVay and the Rams, maybe they could go in there and do something. I don't really think so. I don't think the Rams' offensive line is good enough to hold up to what the San Fran defense can do. But I do think this is still kind of concerning. Even though you're still a favorite to win, there's still kind of something you need to really look at and decide going into next season. They also still remain the number 1 seed due to tiebreakers. Them, the Eagles, and the Lions are all tied right now at 11-4. And then we touched on the Eagles a little bit when discussing a few other things. We're going to shift now to that number 2 seed and the Philadelphia Eagles. They survive a tight game with the Giants that should never be tied. That game should not have been tied. The Eagles are playing sloppy football. The reason they're on this skid is they're playing sloppy. The defense is not holding up. Not Daniel Jones. Tommy DeVito gets benched. Tyrod comes in, almost leads a game-winning drive. They'll let a bad team just hang around. And that's why I have no confidence in the Eagles. And when we get to them, I have no confidence, obviously, really in the Cowboys. A good team, Seattle went in there. They let Drew Lock go and win a game on them. Drive like 94 yards and win a game on them. Picking on every completion was to the same guy, I believe, Bradbury. The Eagles' defense is the idea of if it came out of Georgia, it's got to be good. Works for Peaches, maybe not for a defense. They're going to have to address that defense in the offseason. The back end is just getting burnt. It feels like every other play. If you got a receiver that's kind of okay and a semi-competent quarterback, you should be able to hang 25-30 on them almost. And that defense just they get burned. Now not every team maybe hits that hit on them. For example, the Chiefs, when they lost, there were a couple of plays where I believe Marquez Valdez-Scantling, if he doesn't drop a ball or two, that's 2 entire touchdowns on that defense. Like, he had a full step and a half on that one he dropped in the end zone. I do recall that one. The defense can get got, and maybe you don't need a top 10 defense to win a Super Bowl, but you can't have one of the worst defenses like that. If the front four don't get home, and then the receiver will get home in the end zone, it feels like. That's kind of all I got to say about the Eagles. They're going to probably be the number 2 seed and host the lowest seed, and then we'll have to see who that is. If it's maybe the Rams or somebody with a decent receiving core, they could easily, in my opinion, walk into Philadelphia and walk out with an upset just solely on that defense. I know I'm harping on their defense. I know they've got Jalen Hurts and that offense. Offense only can do so much, and I think Hurts is kind of regressing a little bit now. He has that gap at the end of the first half that they get bailed out by a bad decision or bad officiating, whichever you want to call that part, for a delay of game on the defense. But I think Hurts makes a lot of mistakes, and I think just not all the teams are really able to capitalize on them too much. Because here's something I want to talk about the Eagles. When they lost to the Jets, obviously they have 2 good corners in Reed and Sauce Gardner. They were both gone for that game. That Jets secondary was practice squad guys, and they bullied the Eagles offense. The offense was not clicking on all cylinders. So you don't need a spectacular, in my opinion, defense with elite corners to kind of hold up Philadelphia. You just kind of maybe need a good scheme, kind of know how they need to operate. Don't let their guys get 30 miles wide open. And we talked about the Lions as the 3 seed. Everybody tied the Lions. Obviously, take care of business in Minnesota. Clinched their first ever, technically, NFC North title win. Obviously, they had won the division, but before then, it was back when it was the NFC Central, before they had all the divisions how they are now. So this is technically the first time they've won the NFC North. Congratulations to the Lions. Dan Campbell was some people may have seen, he was on that 0-16 team in, I believe, 2008, and from there he's gone, been a head coach, been a coordinator, been up to a head coach, and he's turned the franchise. It feels completely around. It's a really great story. That Ford Field, at least for one playoff game, is gonna be jumping, and right now it looks like maybe the Rams, and maybe you're gonna have Sean McVay, Dan Campbell, Goff, Matthew Stafford. It's gonna be an interesting game to watch. But the Lions, they've been able to kind of get things done. Turn the season around, beat who they need to beat to try to win this division. So congratulations to the Lions. And they're still alive for the 1 seed. If Philadelphia kind of falls down a little bit, San Francisco maybe stumbles again, it could all go through Ford Field. And that would be, in my opinion, very exciting. And then we're going to go down the list again. We're going to hit up Tampa Bay. I alluded to it in the Jacksonville game. They go and they blow the barn doors off of Jacksonville at home. I believe it was at home. Against the Jaguars. They knocked Trevor Lawrence out of the game. And then they cruise, put up another 30 points. That offense is humming. That defense is rounding into form. That's a team I don't think anybody wants to play in the playoff. You don't want them coming to your building. I don't think you really want to go to their building. The Dallas Cowboys will have to go to Tampa Bay. Yeah, they went there last year and won, but for whatever reason, like I alluded to when talking about them in the Miami discussion, they cannot really do anything on the road. And Tampa Bay is on the road, even though they're an inferior team, a lesser record, even though it's really by only, at this point, I believe, 2 games. It's not as big of a gap as maybe people thought at the time. Um, they can make a run solely because Godwin's doing good. If Baker's hot, Evans is obviously making a case to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver, hitting 1,000 yards again. Yeah, I think Tampa Bay can go into this week against the Saints, take care of business, lock up the division. I think that's a great story for Baker. Obviously, he's going to get some money from somebody. It may not even be Tampa. Tampa may not want to pay him. Who knows how that's going to go. I know they both have been reported to be mutually interested in a longer-term deal, but we got to see what happens. But yeah, I don't see why the Bucs can't go beat Dallas, come back the next week. If they got to play maybe the Rams at home, because like I say, maybe the Rams upset the Lions, or somebody goes and upsets Philly, play another game at home, obviously because they'd be hosting another potential wild card team. If some things kind of break their way, maybe they could potentially have 2 home games. Who knows? Like I said, with Philly being vulnerable, I gave Detroit their props, but Minnesota was in position to win that game, and that's Nick Mullins as your quarterback, so that defense can still kind of be had. I was trying to be nice in a little bit of the Lions segment, but that is their one kind of Achilles heels is defense. So there's 2, obviously, other division winners that could honestly be upset by some wild card teams. But yeah, keep an eye on Tampa. I wouldn't put them in the same class as Cleveland to go win their conference. I kind of put them as a dark horse, like they made the Super Bowl, but then you kind of look back like, well, I guess I can see, kind of be maybe more along the lines of those Giants teams that beat the Patriots, that kind of wild card teams, the Road Warriors a little bit. And then we're going to keep shifting down on the NFC side to the Cowboys, who once again lose on the road, lose to a good team. I don't know what to do with them anymore. It's just the Cowboys. It's what they are. They're probably still going to need a VHS player to watch their last good year, winning a Super Bowl. I don't have any confidence in them to go at this point on the road anywhere. It feels like the Cowboys feel like if they went on the road to go pick up some groceries at the store, they're going to run into problems, maybe hit a parked car or something. On the road, they just don't do anything. They're less points per game. There is something, whether it's the coaching staff or whether it's how they're doing their travel, something is going to have to be addressed. Because at this point, it went from being, kind of just something that the media would maybe talk about to, at this point, even I think they're acknowledging it, that they can't win on the road. So now that's kind of self-perpetuating, almost a wish it into an existence kind of a thing. So I think the Cowboys are going to have to clean a lot of stuff up this offseason, make some very difficult decisions, because I don't think you can take a defense into the playoffs that can be run on, right? I mean, they have a defensive player who's very good at stopping the run. Obviously, he's out, but even before then, I feel like if they just kind of start getting run at and they kind of run through Micah Parsons, they're not letting him tee off every offensive snap. The Cowboys, like I said, there was a lot of hype. Kind of thought about it. I thought they were going to do a lot better. I'm not even a Cowboys fan. I just was trying to look at everything. I'm like, well, they were blowing people out. They were doing what they needed to do. But when it came to just being on the road, it just don't work. Don't know what it is about them, but they just don't particularly work on the road. And then you kind of get into a muddied NFC playoff picture. The Rams look like they were going to be able to kind of maybe not coast, but kind of stay and remain in firm control of that 6 seed and potentially have a matchup against the Lions, which would be an interesting story. Definitely an interesting game, like I alluded to earlier, kind of talking about the Lions. And then that 7th seed, that's a jumbled mess. Somebody's gonna win that, and they're just gonna be happy to be there. My pick is probably the Seahawks. I believe can go in there, get that 7th seed. Maybe they go back to Philly and they beat Philly again. Who knows? The bottom of the NFC is really just rolling a couple of dice and hoping you come up not snake eyes. I'm gonna go ahead and also now kind of talk a little bit more playoffs. I know I've been sprinkling that in all around, but here's what I'm looking at when I look at the playoffs. Have you been there before? How does the team feel as a whole going into the playoffs? And who are you playing? Because you can be a good team with a bad matchup, like how the Browns can kind of be for a lot of the teams. Like they're just bad matchups, a bad fight, And that's kind of how it is. So how I'm seeing it right now is how I kind of predict how everything's going to go. Baltimore wins this week. Baltimore's through 1 seed, gets the bye. I think Miami potentially. If I had to, kind of thinking about it a little more now that I've kind of talked a little bit, Miami takes the 2 seed with Kansas City at 3, and the Colts at the 4 seed. I'm going to change my mind right here live on the air with you guys. Jacksonville wins that division. The Colts couldn't have dropped that Atlanta game and still hoped to win because obviously of Jacksonville. But I think the Colts not the Colts, my apologies. The Jaguars take care of business against the Panthers no matter who's your quarterback. And then in the wild card, we're looking at the Bills, even though I said they weren't going to make the playoffs. They pull the upset against the Cowboys to help kind of get them in. I didn't really talk Bills because, what's there to talk about? They had a bad game against the Chargers and miraculously won. You almost let Eston Stick beat you. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with you. You can win ugly all you want, but I really just don't think Josh Allen and that team, I don't think it's going to carry into the playoffs and go on a deep run like some people do. I just don't see it. They've had one deep run year where they made an AFC title game, but I just don't think it's there for them this year. They'll make it. They kind of might be happy to be there with how everything shook out. But, yeah. So it's probably going to be the Colts, the Bills, and obviously the Browns as your playoff teams. And like I said, the Browns, don't be surprised if they make a Super Bowl. They are fully aware of how good they are. I think that's why Flacco is not afraid of throwing those picks. So, AFC title game, kind of early predictions. I would have to say Baltimore, Kansas City, or Kansas City, Cleveland. I don't see the Chiefs not making the AFC title game, even with all their issues, with who they would have to play potentially. I just see them still making an AFC title game. It may not be at home. The Arrowhead Invitational may be rescinded for a year, but I just kind of think that's how it is right now. Going over to the NFC, obviously, I think San Francisco keeps the 1 seed with who they got left. I think it'll go San Fran, on top to bottom. San Fran, Philly, Lions, and Buccaneers, with Dallas, Rams, and Seattle more than likely in that order. NFC predictions, I'd probably have to say either San Francisco, Philly again, or San Francisco, Philly, San Francisco, Detroit Lions. I know I was kind of talking up the Bucks, but I'm kind of talking when I talk about them. I do speak more of dark horse. Don't be surprised. Not really. I'm ready to stake a claim in the ground and say that they will. Just I wouldn't be surprised. But that also might be because I just like Baker Mayfield as a quarterback, and I think all you need is a puncher's chance in some of these games, and that's pretty much what the playoffs are. Just you got your puncher's chance and hope you land your best shot. So something towards the end of this podcast that I always like to do, I like to give out a few live betting advice, kind of give you a few things. And we're going to go right now. I'm pulling up my phone just out on DraftKings. All odds are used through DraftKings for the NFL this week. So I'm going to pull this up and we're going to give you some advice on about 3 or 4 games. We don't really do the Thursday game. You can if you can bet it if you want to, but I typically stay away from Thursday games. They're really weird, and I'm not a fan of them. San Francisco, it's a whole lot of points. 13 points. I would swallow the 13 points against the Commanders. That's a 32nd ranked defense to let Trevor Siemian put up 30 on them. A very upset San Francisco team, hyper-focused. Ooh, it just ain't going to be pretty. I think they're going to blow them out of every bit of the water. I could see that being a 45-15 game or something crazy like that. San Francisco that's a get-right game. 13 points, that's a big spread. Normally I wouldn't take such a spread, but San Francisco minus 13 on the road at the Commanders, I'd swallow that. Rams 4.5 points at the Giants, favored by 4.5. I'd take that too. The Rams are rounding into form. The Giants gave their best punch forward. They're going to be starting Tyrod Taylor. I think the Rams go in, win by about a touchdown, 4.5. If that pops up to 5, I think between 4.5 and 5, you're good. If it gets to 6, maybe not, because that's when kind of maybe a field goal might take you out of it. A lot of big spreads this week. I would also take, as for the last one I would recommend, I would take the Lions to cover at Dallas. I think Lions still think they can get the 1 seed. And I think that their offense should be able to at least cover the 6. Even if the Cowboys kind of roll them, I think the backdoor cover is well with an option with Jared Goff. And that's in a dome. Goff likes playing in domes. So I would take Detroit plus 6. Even if they don't outright win, or even if they're getting blown out, the backdoor is plus 6. If that falls down to maybe a 5.5, 5, maybe stay away. But plus 6, definitely take the Lions. So we're taking the Lions plus 6, 49ers minus 13, and then the Rams minus 4.5. And those are going to be about a nice little 3 picks. And if you do feel frisky, I'd take the Bears. It's at Chicago. My apologies. I would take the Falcons plus 3. They still think they can do something. Chicago, is kind of playing for pride. Take the Falcons plus 3. They did a good job against the Colts. They should be able to keep that rolling against the Bears. Arthur Smith kind of still trying to prove he can still be head coach. Tyler Heineke trying to make sure he still has a job at the end of the year with another team, maybe trying to vie for a low-end bridge starting job. But that's be one other that's kind of a dumpster dive kind of a game, kind of a plug your nose and take one. I'd take the Falcons plus 3 on that. So there are your options. There are your picks on the gambling side. Like I said, all odds are provided by DraftKings, my preferred sports book. You can use your own if you'd like and still kind of check the odds against what I've said. But that is about the last of this today. I'm going to do a little quick rundown of some games to keep an eye on. Chiefs-Bengals. Chiefs should be able to get right. Jake Browning and the Bengals trying to get right. I think clock hits midnight for Browning fully. Last week's not a fluke. I think they're kind of done. The magic's out of it. Chiefs take the Bengals. Chiefs clinch the West with that win. Miami and Baltimore. I think Baltimore wins, clinches that division. Kind of puts that 2 seed up for grabs and division up for grabs with Buffalo. Buffalo plays the Patriots with Zappum at quarterback. Don't be surprised if that's a close game. just like with the Chargers, I thought they were going to blow them. I'm like, there's no way that's close. And then all of a sudden it's close. It's like, what's going on here? I would keep an eye on that Bills Patriots. That's a stay away betting wise, but as just a flat upset alert, why can't the Patriots sweep them? The Bills aren't a great team, you know. That would be one that I would say keep your eye on. As for the NFC, obviously the 49ers get-back game against Commanders. Philadelphia is playing Arizona. Not a lot of interesting matchups. The winner of the Bucks and the Saints has a good chance of winning that division. I know if the Bucks win, they clinch. If the Saints win, they tie, and I think they would own the tiebreaker, and then go into the last week. But I think the Bucks win it. Bucks win the division, so that's another one to kind of keep your close eyes on. And then Dallas and the Lions. Dallas should win that game, in all honesty. The way they match up, they should. But with how the Lions have been rolling, I kind of lean Lions in a straight pick 'em. So that's kind of what we've had going on today. We covered that Russell Wilson stuff at the top of it, him being benched and where he might go, what fits. I kind of recapped that if you joined a little bit later. I believe he's going to get traded. They benched him due to money reasons, which I went into a little bit more detail earlier. I don't think he stays with the Broncos. Just kind of as a quick recap of that. So, all right. That is going to do us for the second episode of the Fifth Down Podcast. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share us around with your friends, trying to get this thing to grow. We just started it. Feel free to offer some feedback in the comments. We're receptive to it. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be here next week with a recap, see where I was right, see where I was wrong, getting into previewing the last week of the NFL season, and after that we'll be on to the playoffs. But this has been the Fifth Down Podcast.